Nice to be here. This is my fourth of the conferences that are put on by this group, and they're always my favorite. My name is Kadlubek, and I am one of the founders of this company, Meow Wolf. I was CEO from 2015 to 2019 during our kind of biggest growth period, and have been around with the group since 2008, the group of friends, and I'll get more into that. Meow Wolf creates large-scale, immersive, multimedia art installations. They're also storytelling experiences. They're also psychedelic experience, which I'll get more into as well. We started off in Santa Fe, and we've grown to 3 locations. So we have a location in Santa Fe, we have a location in Denver, we have a location in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so yeah, really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll try to leave some time for some Q&A. This is definitely a more aligned room than I had at Senior Spaces when I was talking about Meow Wolf to Senior Living Spaces. So I think there'll probably be a good amount of interest and questions here. Thanks, Michael, for having me again, man. So Meow Wolf has a mission statement, and it's inspiring creativity in people's lives in hopes that the imagination may transform our world. It seems like a pretty basic statement, like inspiring creativity in people's lives so that the imagination can transform our world. But it's really quite a mind-boggling, revolutionary thought. And a lot of times mission statements are created and it's just kind of like fluffy, it's like doesn't really have anything actionable, it doesn't really mean anything, it just like sounds good. But we truly believe that by experiencing a Meow Wolf exhibition, that people can come out of that exhibition with an activated imagination, with a hope for the future, recognizing that the future is possible, and that the future is possible from the starting point of the imagination, and that through that, the world can be transformed. We really believe this. This is a picture here of our exhibition in Denver. It's called Convergence Station. It's a 90,000 square foot building, purpose-built, placed in between one on-ramp, one interstate, and one crossroad. So it's like this weird, soggy slice of pizza-shaped building that rises up 5 stories into the air. And it's crazy to look at this, like that this is real and that this actually opened. But it's definitely not where Meow Wolf got its start. Like it's definitely not how things began for us. Back in 2008, we were a bunch of 20-somethings in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just wanting to express ourselves. None of us had really gone to art school. None of us really had gone to college, to be honest. We were working restaurant jobs, hotel jobs, and living in this town in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is like very artsy, has a lot of galleries, alternative thinking. And yet we were a bunch of like 20-something artists who were born and raised in Santa Fe, and we couldn't find any venue to express our work. Like no gallery or museum space wanted to show us. We were like a little bit antithetical to the identity of Santa Fe. The identity of Santa Fe is very sunsets and like cowboy boots and turquoise jewelry, and that's not who we were, And so we, after like trying to like get our art and get our theater and get our music shows and get our culture into a venue in Santa Fe, we finally just said, fuck it, we're just gonna open our own venue. We're just gonna do it ourselves. And so we rented out a space, kind of all pitched in, $100 a month to pay for the space. And we started Meow Wolf. And at first, it was really just like pulling materials out of dumpsters, and then making art out of them inside of this old kind of dank warehouse. Basically, we were building like forts. We were just like adults who still wanted to just like be little kids building forts and inviting people into them. And we were building spaces that were like disgusting because we were using disgusting materials and the warehouse was really gross. And you know, people would come through and we'd get like maybe 100 people to see our shows. And this went on for like 7 years, where this group of artists were just kind of pulling resources and building whatever we could together. We wouldn't really make money from it. Though I would always be the one who, like, before we had a show that was opening, I was always the one who was running around with cardboard boxes and writing donations on the side and like cutting little holes at the top, like trying to convince the rest of the artists that, like, hey, if we're gonna do a show, we need to try to get donations. And we would make like, you know, like $200 in a night, and then we'd blow it all on like weed and beer. That was our life. This is how we worked for like 7 years. And we were all ready to kind of go our separate ways because like what began as like a really fun like passion project for a bunch of 20-somethings had quickly turned into this weird obligation for a bunch of 30-somethings. And we're all looking around being like, is this really what we're doing with our life? We're like committing to like, you know, this, you know, kind of derelict lifestyle of building art inside of a gross warehouse. You know, people are like, I want to go back to college. I want to start a family. I need to get a real job. But I was like convinced that if we got the right space and we had the right business plan, that we could actually do the thing. And so we checked out this space. This space here is an old bowling alley that the lanes had been stripped out of, and it had sat empty for like 6 or 7 years. And I walked through it with the real estate agent, and I was just like, this place is perfect. Like if we could get this, you know, I know it's a big project, like 30,000 square foot building. It's like a really big project, but if we could get this, like we could do something really remarkable. And so the real estate agent goes, all right, cool. How much money does Meow Wolf have to put down for a down payment? I was like, dude, we got no money, man. Like, I was like broke. I owed my parents $5,000. I was sleeping in their house for free. I was like 32 years old at the time. I was like, dude, we don't got any money. And he's like, all right, well, who do you know who might have money who can put a down payment on this building? And I was like, well, I do know this guy, George R.R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones, who lives in Santa Fe and happened to be he was my boss at one point at a movie theater that he owns, like a little art house movie theater in Santa Fe that he owns. And it was so funny because like when I applied at this movie theater, I was applying for like a $15 an hour like marketing position, basically uploading images and showtimes to his movie theater website. And they call me back and they're like, hey, you know, when I applied, they call me back and they're like, George would like to interview you next week. And I was like, George himself is interviewing people? Like this was like season 3, Red Wedding had just happened. And I was like, George R. R. Martin is interviewing people for a $15 an hour job. All right. So when I showed up to that meeting, I just started pitching him on Meow Wolf. So I kind of planted the seed in his head like early on about this like thing that we were doing. Fast forward a year later, I wrote him an email. It's like, hey, George, I know you like to buy old buildings in Santa Fe. Would you like to buy a bowling alley? And he said, not particularly. But I went and met with him, and I kind of pitched him the idea of the project. And I told him about these like sci-fi secret passageway portals, and like we're gonna do this crazy psychedelic thing, and like aliens and creatures. And he said yes. And so in January of 2015, about 8 years after Meow Wolf had started off as this art collective, George bought the bowling alley and leased it to us. So he was kind of the first domino to fall. A lot of people think that George is like the philanthropist that gave us millions of dollars. It's not true. He actually was just our landlord for the first few years. And so we worked our ass off for from 2015, January 2015 to March of 2016, so about 14 months. So we transformed the bowling alley into the first permanent Meow Wolf exhibition called the House of Eternal Return. The House of Eternal Return is basically you buy a ticket, you walk down a dark hallway, and you enter into this front lawn of this 2-story Victorian house. And from this point forward, it's your experience. It's up to you where you want to go. You can go through the front door, you can go through the side, you can sit on the front porch. Most people decide to just go into the house. And inside the house, you are basically freely roaming and exploring this family's house that lives here. There's some wonky things. You can kind of start to pick up on some wonky details that tells you that something has gone on here. And the family is nowhere to be seen, so obviously something has happened to the family. But you can read newspapers, read their journals, go through their drawers, go through their clothes, look at notes that they've left for each other, watch their home movies on their VCR. So you can really dive deep into the story of this family while you're in this house. And then you get to the kitchen, and you get to the fridge. You open the fridge, and instead of there being food in the fridge, it's a long lit hallway into who knows where. Or you might go to the dryer and open the dryer, and it's this tube slide that goes to who knows where. And if there's anything that we learned through this process, it's that people desperately want to go through their household appliances. Because people love this shit. They love it. They're Instagram and TikTok and, oh my God, I get to go through the fridge. It's some deep-seated thing about, and it's I've thought about this because it's true. It is a joke, but it is also true. People fucking want to go through their household appliances, and I think that there is something there. We all grow up in kind of similar houses, no matter where we grew up. All have similar appliances. It's when you're a kid, and you're kind of starting to figure out what the world is all about, and then you realize that everyone kind of lives in a copy-pasted version of the same thing that everybody else lives in, and we all have kind of a copy-pasted version of the same refrigerator and the same dryer. And it starts to I don't know, for me, it's wait, isn't there something more? Isn't there something beyond these walls? Isn't there something more than just this formulaic, copy-paste? And I think that that's what we're touching on at Meow Wolf, is we're saying there is something more. There is something beyond that, that framework. So once you go through the portals, you end up in this crazy, multi-level, colorful, psychedelic, playful world of art and sound and interactivity, and it's totally your world to just explore and have fun in. Lots of opportunities for, Instagram and TikTok posts, of course. But it's more than that. We really believe that Meow Wolf's creating something that can't be captured, can't be entirely captured through an iPhone. These stalagmites here are interactive instruments. So you walk up to them and people can, each one of those little dots of light play a different sound, play a different tone. So you can have 20, 30 people in there kind of all pressing different buttons and making this orchestral music together inside of the caves. We'll add performance into the mix every now and then, just kind of create that surprise and delight that people are looking for. So we opened it in 2016, and we really didn't know how this was going to go. We had seen some immersive art work really well within the art world. We were watching James Turrell open his exhibits at LACMA. or Kasama opened her exhibits at the Broad. And those were really popular, but we had never really seen anyone try to do it to do it for like the general population. So we didn't really know like how it was gonna go. And in the first year, we had anticipated that we would see about 125,000 visitors to Meow Wolf. And this would have been a really good number. Santa Fe is a very small town, 70,000 people. It's really hard to get to. So we're like, yeah, if we can get 125,000 people a year, we're gonna be pretty psyched. But we blew it out of the water. In the first year, we saw 500,000 visitors. And it became the #1 attraction in the entire state of New Mexico in its first year. And I was the CEO at the time, and I don't have any business background. Like, I went out, raised the money to build this project, like talked to George, got the lease signed. But like 12 months after we opened, we're sitting with like $4 or $5 million in our bank account, and dealing with like processing people at this crazy rate, and like having a staff and having staff hours and having an HR department, and it was like crazy, a crazy ride for us. And it was people of all ages, all backgrounds, all education levels, all socioeconomic levels, people who had never stepped foot in an art gallery before. People would never even feel welcome in an art museum. We're coming to Meow Wolf to walk around and look at weird psychedelic art. And we had like people driving from Kansas, across the country, like soccer moms, soccer dads from conservative areas of the country, driving to Santa Fe to experience weird psychedelia. And we're getting amazing reviews, 4-star, 5-star reviews. Things like, it's awesome, it's beautiful, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. But there are some reviews that really were kind of taking us aback, like this one in the bottom corner here by Hannah that says, I went a few years ago and it's life-changing. And this is where, like, as CEO, I was like looking at these reviews, and we're getting notes, handwritten notes, we're getting emails that were kind of saying the same thing, like, this is life-changing. I was like, what's life-changing about this? Like, I know that we built something cool. I know that we built something beautiful and that, you can take cool pictures and it's fun, but like life-changing, what's going on there? And so kind of like dug into it a little bit and read this book. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it, from Joseph Pine, The Experience Economy, that kind of walks through the evolution of the economy from commodity to good to service to experience. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this. But it still didn't quite get to the life-changing part of it. And so I actually reached out to Joseph Pine, the author of Experience Economy, and I said, hey man, I read your book, would love to talk to you about this. Can you talk about the life-changing aspect? I kind of shared with him these reviews that we're getting. He's like, well, yeah, the latest edition of our book actually adds another tier beyond experience economy, and we call it the transformation economy. And so he kind of walked me through that as to what the transformation economy was all about. So I took that information and I was like, okay, so what's transformational about Meow Wolf? And I go back to the fridge, go back to this, pseudo joke of people walking through the appliance. And I think something really magical happens in this moment for people. When they open the fridge and they realize that it's not actually a fridge. The fridge basically is more than what the fridge is supposed to be. And there's kind of this like break in reality where the fridge is more than what the fridge is supposed to be. And I think in that moment, people realize that the world can be more than what the world is supposed to be. And then even more importantly, people realize that they can be more than what they're supposed to be. And that's the transformational moment. We're like unlocking for a moment the opportunity for people to be anything that they want to be. We're sort of subverting reality and allowing them to be whoever they choose to be in that moment. And it starts with agency. So I started to kind of break this down into what are the different component parts that are going on here. And it starts with agency. So it starts with giving the guest total agency and choice in their experience. Transformational experiences happen first and foremost through agency. And so that means that on the operational side of things, that means on the way that we design the space, like we don't give people maps, we don't give people guides to the exhibition. We basically just let them do their own thing. And we train our operators to not give too much information to guests. Like if they ask like, hey, what's the point of this? Or what's the story? Or what am I supposed to do next? Be vague. Let them make their own choices. Because what's important about that is that agency then leads to exploration. And exploration ultimately leads to discovery. And this seems really basic, exploration, discovery. Like, seems like something that should happen all the time, but in reality, like in our world, it doesn't happen that often, especially in physical spaces, especially in, out in the world. Exploration and discovery is actually pretty limited. To those of us who get to go out into nature, those of us who get to travel abroad, you might get this feeling of exploration and discovery, fairly often. But for a lot of consumers in the world, exploration and discovery is quite limited. And here's kind of the kicker to it, is that exploration and discovery only exist within the presence or the context of the unknown. So if the context of the thing that somebody's experiencing is already known, there's no exploration and discovery to be had because it's already known. So your brain doesn't have to explore, it doesn't have to discover because they already know what it is. And so they just kind of go into default mode. So in order to activate exploration and discovery, you have to create an unknown context to do it. And this is really hard to do in the brick and mortar physical spaces, to create an unknown experience. But the thing is that people have exploration and discovery actually a lot on their phones. So when you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram or you're on TikTok, you're scrolling through, exploring and discovering at this like insane maniacal rate. Almost like, and we're trained, it's like we scroll looking for new content, we scroll trying to discover new content, and we're like, we see something that we've seen before, we immediately scroll past it. And we're trying to find something that we've never seen before. And so it's like, you have to think about the consumer as basically training, like they are being trained. We are all being trained at like a Pavlovian level to constantly be seeking out new content and to pass over the stuff that we've already seen. But then when you walk out into the real world, everything out there we've seen before. It looks like, what city is this? Or what suburb is this? Like, we've seen this. And so it's not interesting. It doesn't activate that exploration and discovery that we get all the time on our iPhones. And so that's why like younger generations are always, when they're out in places like this, they're on their phone all the time. And I tell people, I'm like, don't get mad at kids for being on their phone all the time. Like, create a more interesting world. Like, the phone has more interesting content than the physical world does. But it's deeper than just the physical builds of our suburban developments. This phenomena of knownness is driven by the knownness of our own identity. The greatest apparatus of knownness we do to ourselves, and we call it our identity. When you're a kid, you enter this world, and the entire world is an unknown place. The entire context of the world is unknown. So as a kid, you're constantly exploring and discovering. That's what you're doing. You're curious, you're spirited, you're excited. The future's possible. You're looking towards the future like anything can happen, like anything's possible. But then when you grow up, you now start to build all these kind of rules and regulations for yourself. And you give it a name. My name's Vince. That's the system, that's the name that I gave the system for myself, and it tells me what I like, it tells me how I talk, it tells me what I do in life, it tells me how I drive, the direction I drive home, tells me what types of people I'm interested in. And over time, this identity of knownness, all these rules and things that we create for ourselves that tell us who we are, starts to suffocate out the exploration and discovery that feels so good as a kid. The exploration and discovery that creates spirit in your body and in your mind. And we get sad and we have midlife crises and we start to like freak out. And there's a lot of, this is sort of like what is leading a bit to the transformation economy, where people are seeking out ways to overcome themselves. People are trying to get beyond the knownness of identity that they've created for themselves. And it's because we're in a really interesting time as an entire species. For millions of years, we've developed a part of our brain that is really good, the hippocampus, is really good at giving attention to past-based things. And so our memory is super strong. Like you can remember you can remember your birthday from 20 years ago when you went on that trip, and you can remember like what it looked like and what happened there, and you can have an image in your head of this. And so our memory can hold really stable images that are consistent, that are reliable. But when we use that same part of our brain to think about the future, it's very unstable. Like it's hard for a lot of people to like hold a future thought, hold a future vision stable. And this makes sense because like we needed to develop our past-based mind in order to survive. We needed to remember how to grow the crops, and we needed to remember how to build the huts, or where the tiger was hidden behind the bush. Like we needed to remember things in order to have safety. But what's happening now in this moment is that like this past-based memory is not as important anymore, because we've externalized our systems of safety to the point where we've now freed up the mind to be future-based explorers. Yet there's not many things out in the world that actually activate that part of people's minds, even though they desperately want it. So there's a lot of like spiritual pursuits that people will go on to try to like move into this new being outside of the context of their identity. People will do things like this, go on like really deep psychedelic drug trips to try to like activate that part of their brain. And I think a lot of the research that you're seeing coming out of UCLA or Johns Hopkins or a lot of the UNM that speak to psychedelics as a kind of revolutionary pharmaceutical cure for things like anxiety and depression and PTSD points to the same thing. It's like we want to get over our past and we want to move into the future. But we find that imaginative experiences can also do this. Like fully immersive imaginative experience has the power to take people out of the reality, the past-based, memory-based, this is how reality is type of thinking, and move them into that space of being a future-based being. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our projects in Las Vegas and in Denver. So in Vegas, we're in this place called Area 15. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. It's like a big experiential mall in Vegas. And our project inside of that mall is a fictitious grocery store called Omega Mart. Omega Mart is a 5,000 square foot grocery store. So it's about the size of like a small CVS or small Walgreens or something. And it has about 300 SKUs, all of which we created in-house. So these are all like fictitious grocery items that can actually be purchased. So when somebody walks in, they pay $45, $50 to buy a ticket to go inside of our grocery store, and then they can shop within a fictional grocery store, but they can actually like buy this stuff. And it's just everyday items. It's like deodorant that we created, it's toilet paper, it's laundry detergent. And then similar to the House of Eternal Return, we have like these portals that then take you into, really beautiful, amazing art. So what's behind the grocery store is another 30,000 square feet of kind of story-driven, immersive, experiential art. The store is pretty amazing. I wanted to kind of like talk a little bit more about the store itself. So we do about 5 times more revenue per square foot in our grocery store than your average Walgreens does in their grocery store. And yet people are buying the same type of product that they would get. The only difference is that the label is a fictitious, funny joke piece of art label. And it kind of points to the power of in-world retail. Speaks to the power of like fictional retail. I think about Butterbeer at Hollywood, at the Universal Studios Harry Potter World, and how like people are spending $20 on this like big thing of sugar water that tastes gross. They don't even drink the whole thing because it's so disgusting. They end up tossing it out after like 2 drinks, but they like have to buy the Butterbeer. Everyone has to buy the Butterbeer. And it just points to people like wanting to live in a world that's different than the world that they know and giving them the opportunity to do so. And then this is the project in Denver, Convergence Station, which you saw the slide on earlier. And I'll kind of just go into it a little bit. This is our most like monumental project to date. This is like a 40-foot tall sculpture in the middle of this incredible space that we called Numina. You can see that we've definitely evolved in our design build efforts. This project, I would say if you visit the Denver one, you can't see it all in one visit. Like it's so massive. You could spend 3 or 4 hours here and still not see all the rooms. This is an incredible cathedral, stands about 40 feet tall as well, that we built out of like colored plexi. And inside there's a wheel that you can turn, and that turns the top of the dome, which is like a 16-foot tall dome or 16-foot wide dome that turns, and then like kaleidoscopic colors like project everywhere on the ground. And then we're about to expand into Texas. So we just announced that we have 2 projects happening in Texas, one in Grapevine and one in Houston. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Grapevine one. We're going to be at the Grapevine Mills Mall, Simon property. And it's a kind of a big leap for us, but something that we wanted to prove out. We thought it was important as a company to prove it out. And, will this work in a suburban mall? So we're taking over a Bed Bath & Beyond space, about 35,000 square feet of space. And we should be opening sometime in the fall of next year. And it's in a very conservative area of northwest Dallas, a dry area. There's no alcohol served in the city of Grapevine, and so but our belief is that like what we create, that art is something that everybody wants, that creativity is something that everybody desires, the imagination is something that everybody wants to experience. This isn't just like the weirdo freak art kids in art school that you think of. No, like every single person, no matter who they voted for president, or what their socioeconomic class is, or what ethnicity they are, they want to be inspired. They want their imagination to be inspired. That's our bet. That's our gamble. And so yeah, we'll be opening there, and it's a kind of a concept rendering of how the facade's going to look. So, yeah, it's been a pretty amazing ride for us. Like, I guess learning about where people are right now, where consumers are, where like younger generations are, and how to provide the types of physical spaces that, because you have to remember, I mean, so many of these kids are internet native, like deeply internet native at this point, you know, like social media native at this point, TikTok native. Like, what does the physical world look like? What does it need to look like for TikTok native kids to be engaged, you know, to want to get out and spend money, to want to get out and have fun? What does that need to look like? So yeah, thanks. That's my presentation. I appreciate it. I'm going to take some...
Amazing. Thank you so much for telling your story, Vince. It's really astonishing.
Yeah.
And Vince, you're actually going to be doing an Ask Me Anything session during our masterminds today.
Totally.
Up top. But we do have a couple minutes now before we head to lunch. Does anyone have any questions? That is a hand straight in the air.
With imagination being so important to your model,
Yeah.
how do you prevent people from seeing online or social media the door, the portals?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so people see it, for sure. And so, like, you know, we can't keep everything a secret. So, then, I mean, the goal for us then is to, you know, what's important about that is that that agency piece is really important to that. Because, like, if it was a prescribed experience where it's like you walk this way, walk into the house, then walk this way, then walk into the kitchen, and then open the fridge, and then you go through it, so it's like single file, then the reveal wouldn't be very effective. But because people can go any direction they want, and there's so much more to then discover, like they'll do the fridge because they've seen it online, and they'll be excited about that. They don't really know what it means on the other side of the fridge necessarily, unless they've watched a lot of YouTube videos and stuff. But I think it's that we give people the opportunity to explore and discover on their own beyond just these big reveal moments, and kind of like do it at a really maximal level, where we just are making sure that there's things to be discovered almost in every square foot of the entire space.
Any other questions? I have one. Why Meow Wolf? Why that name?
Yeah, we chose it out of a hat. 2 hats. We had a bunch of words in one hat and a bunch of words in another hat, and this was at our very first meeting when we all kind of committed to putting $100 a month into it, and we just started pulling words out of the hat and putting them together. There were some other options like the Vibe Hut. We almost called ourselves the Vibe Hut, and this was in 2008, long before the word vibe was very cool. We were ahead of our time.
See, everybody, you're overthinking things too much. You just get 2 hats. That's it, you know. Any other questions? We probably have time for one more.
Yeah, I'll give you the mic.
We have about 5 minutes, it looks like.
I have a question. So if you, as you're innovating, you know, as you're building into different markets, internally, what is the catalyst to inspire that innovation? We've all heard about, you know, the Disney think tanks. What is your guys' model and what's different about it?
Yeah. It's been a lot of different, I mean, like Vegas and Denver were chosen for a bunch of different reasons. We were in growth mode, and so it was like, is there a developer that's willing to take a risk and build a $35 million building for us, even though we don't, you know, we're not even cash flow, you know, have the cash flow to support it. And so like Denver was like a developer taking a big risk on us, which was awesome. Similar with Vegas. But now at this point where we're like, you know, solid, you know, Denver has 1.3 million visitors in its first year. Vegas has 900,000 visitors in its first year. Now our process is like, what markets do we want to be in? Start there. So, you know, we're spreading regionally and looking at, you know, markets above 3.5, 4 million people in the metro. And then from there, we start looking at sites and trying to find a site that fits, you know, that has accessibility, has connectivity, is going to be easy for people to get to, but also has something cool and something like unique about it. And so, yeah, then it just becomes a conversation with developers at that point. But we do have some like some prerequisites when it comes to the type of space. Like we need, you know, at least 30,000 square feet. We need 28-foot high, you know, clear height ceiling. And so there's like things like that. But yeah, for the most part, it's a pretty standard process now for us.
I think there was another hand over here. It was, oh.
So what is the #1 item sold in the grocery store? And are you going to start a grocery chain?
I would, oh gosh, I so badly want to start. I want to scale. I would love, I mean, I'm not the CEO anymore, so now I just get to be like the crazy founder Vince who comes up with crazy ideas that the CEO gets to say no to. But I really want to scale the Omega Mart grocery store by itself and not have an admission price, just like actually just move that into different areas. I think it would be really great. And there's like a fictitious CEO of Omega Mart, like in the storyline. Her name's Cecilia Dram, and I'd love to go as far to like actually hire Cecilia Dram, the actress, to be our CEO of the Omega Mart retail chain. So like just blurring that line between is this really a grocery store or not? But what's the #1 selling item? I think it's this deodorant called Whale Song, calling for peace. The scent of the deodorant is calling for peace, and the deodorant's called Whale Song, and it has a picture of a whale in the front. I'm trying to think of other ones. Yeah, there's so many. You walk through the grocery store, and it's just like joke after joke after joke. Y'all would get a kick out of it. I like Sweet Whispers toilet paper. It's like, and it's like has a picture of like a woman like holding the toilet paper like really close to her face. It's like super intimate relationship with your toilet paper. Oh, actually, my favorite one is a cereal. It's like a Wheaties type cereal, but it's called Rumored Associates, and it's two like people, like two 50-year-old like one 50-year-old guy and one 50-year-old woman who are like kind of smiling, and it's Rumored Associates. So it's like, are these two people hitting it right now? Cereal.
Vince, on your future growth, looking ahead. So obviously opening the two locations in Texas, and that's partnering with Simon, right? How do you see you guys fitting more into a lot of these, which will probably be a lot more empty, say, department stores and plug into malls? Do you see that as like the big opportunity for Meow Wolf?
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity for art in general, or like imaginative experiences in general. The problem is that so many quality arts and imaginative experiences speak a completely different language than mall developer language. Like, they just don't speak the same language from like a cultural perspective or literal like language. And so there's this huge gap between the people who can actually produce the type of experiences that are going to get people excited, and then the people who want those types of experiences. There's like a huge gap. For us, I think we'll see. I mean, I think that's why we're doing Grapevine. We're doing Grapevine to kind of see how it goes. Does it work with our brand? Do people resonate with it? Does it work to be, in line, like, in line at a mall? Do we need an exterior entry? There's a lot of questions that we have around that. So I think for us, it's like we're kind of prototyping it out in Grapevine and seeing how it goes. But if it works, then yeah, for sure.
Awesome.